Fine. So that would be good to, yeah, kind of summarize and make sure we have that in mind for later on when we try to work with this setup of a living lab. So that would be the intention now of the next minutes, to maybe recapture what Tamas said, and then connect this and take it along for later on. Maybe, Tamas, can I ask you to make a start and describe what you think could be the subject or content of the discussions in a living lab on a larger scale for this case?
Well, because this living lab is a new thing to me, well, mostly it's the communication between the stakeholders. I think that should be discussed later, especially regarding with the water managing body. And I don't know. So.
Yeah, and the different measures that are actually could be relevant in this area. If I remember right, it's these water traps, the flood traps, the systems that you
yeah, the floodgates, or we call them floodgates or catchments. Yeah, Otto should be here. He knows more about those activities plans, but yeah, that's also a topic.
And also a potential reopening of some of the water channels that we started to discuss a bit in the end of your presentation. That seems to be still utopical at the moment, but could we include this into this list?
The reopening or closing some of them, maybe. But because the water managing body is always scare people with floods, that it's a reason why we think that it is science fiction to ask for closing some of these canals or changing the water regime management in this area. Because we tried it on Palić Lake also, because we have a problem with the fixed water regime, which is non-natural at the moment. So they have higher water levels during the summer period because of the sails and boats and other sport recreational activities. And it's almost minimized in the winter period. So it's very unnatural water regime for the lake. And since I think almost 10 years we are working on this change, and nothing happened during this period regarding the water regime on Palić Lake.
But the lake was a little bit remote from the wetland area of Cantabria, right?
Yeah, okay. It was just an example how hard it is to work with the water management body.
What do you think about this touristic aspect, which Maya mentioned? How does it link to this living lab concept? Because there you explained there is that beach, small beach, and then they want to revive the area, and how that can be connected.
Yeah, they already have a funding budget for the renovation of this area. And since we planned it to do it within the UNDP project, or it was part of the proposal, we already asked for the nature conservation permit for that, and we got a positive permit. So it's according to the nature protection priorities, and they can do it whenever they want. But as I mentioned, it could also be a place for education and promotion of nature protection.
Mhm. And wasn't there another set of measures or type of measure that could be relevant beyond the flood traps, the sluices? Yeah. Was there not another one that you mentioned?
Yeah, what about the grazing? Is that part of the potential management measures? Also in this
Yeah,
area?
grazing is yeah. So I didn't mention, but of course, every protected area needs to have a 10-year management plan. We created the draft version and we sent it to various authorities for permits and stuff. But since the beginning of the protection of this area, we couldn't finish this process. So as of today, we don't have an accepted management plan. Basically, we are waiting for the water managing body again to give us the conditions for this plan. And it was a year ago or even more since we asked them for this paper. We also need to have a public presentation of this 10-year plan. And the grazing and almost all of these activities, which are presented in my presentation earlier, are part of this management plan, not as a project activity, but as a focus on the measurements or main measurements for the restoration of these wetlands.
Yeah.
How does locals use this area right now?
We couldn't hear
The question was, how do the locals use this area right now?
locals. Well, partially for they have sheep and goats. Some of them have also cattle, not this gray Podolian cattle, but the common ones. So for grazing, there are some parts which are moved, and of course regular agricultural lands. But they were taking into account when they proposed this area for protection. So that's the main land use.
Yeah, that's really good to know.
Is the whole area of the protected land still, or part of it still for agricultural use? Or has the status changed since it was protected?
Could you hear it, Tamás?
No, barely.
Yeah. Is the entire area still used as agricultural land, or has the status changed already in some way?
No,
Yes.
so the protection doesn't change anything regarding the land use. So it's just some measurements, mainly on the government-owned lands, where we can enforce these conditions or measures. On the private lands, it's very hard. But for example, on this protected area, people are willing to follow our instructions, or at least people who we were met before. And as I mentioned earlier, the municipality is also very perceptive for these new changes regarding the protection of this area. But and they already, which is very interesting, they already sent letters to lots of land users to inform them about the protection of this area. So they are, as I said, very eager to work with us.
Yeah. Very interesting to know.
And what was the response of that to the people that got this information?
Yeah, that was very interesting. Some of them instantly called us almost every day for a week that is it forbidden then to use these lands, or how we can use them? And we explained them that, of course, there are some restrictions, minor restrictions mainly timely or the method of the land use, but basically it almost everything remains the same, almost. So they were relieved that it is not a strict prohibition of land use, but we also informed them that we plan to make detailed presentations about the new protected area in every village or place that is within the area. So it's at least 8 or 10 places that we have to go to this local, kako se kaže, mesta zajednica. To znamo na engleskom.
Like a
Not
small
local,
community, yeah.
yeah.
So.
And of course, if we got the
Complicated, so, yeah, come.
So my question was, what are the main obstacles for implementing the policy, like foreseen for the time being? Or the measures they want to implement within the area?
Yeah, Milos was wondering, what do you think are the main obstacles right now for implementing those measures?
regarding grazing or all the measures?
Well, even separately or each one? Or both, if there are something.
Separately or generally? Or all together?
Well, the main problem is still the water managing body. So most of the things stop at them. So I think that's the biggest problem. Maybe there are some farmers, bigger farmers who like to use their lands as they want, not as they should within a protected area, but that's a minor problem.
Yeah, that's also an interesting statement, I think, to take along. In my notes, I had written in your presentation that it's not only the floodgates, that's the correct term, that could be a solution, but also drainage channels. And I'm not quite clear yet whether these drainage channels are actually referring to the same measure as opening up the channels.
No, I think
something else.
I meant with that we want to put these floodgates where the artificial or natural drainage channels appeared. So we want to prevent water from entering the canal, the main drainage canal. So that, I don't know if it's more clear now. So we don't want to open drainage canals at all. No, we don't want to open them.
Would you like not to have them? This is what I mean. They want to close the channels so that the water doesn't drain away from the flood areas and into the channels, which is why they were built to dry out for agriculture. But because they are so dry most of the year now, and then we have torrential rain during 2 days, and then it floods everything. They want to try to keep the small amounts of water throughout the year in the wetland and to close out the channels using the floodgates. But then in theory, if someone would ask just you, nature protection people, should we have drainage channels or not? Most probably they would say no. Is that the question? Like the to reverse the previous state, like to final to have the pristine condition without drainage channels. Is that the question, Berit?
Yeah, whether doing something with the drainage channels was also an option to discuss. Whether destroying or but now I understood it's actually about destroying them to prevent the water from flowing out. Yeah, that wasn't clear before.
Just
how it would work.
two sorts of channels. One sort of channels are the channels which are created by water management company. They are old and new, whatever.
Yeah.
And another channels, which Tamas mentioned, this is like erosion channels, not which are naturally created by the flood waters, which are moving from these like plain salty shallow depressions. And so the idea to create these water gates between the big, artificially dig the canal network and this naturally created by erosion channels, which provide the hydrological connectivity between the big drainage channels and this depression. So if we trap the water in this depression by this artificial 18 dams, so it will help to restore more natural processes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Maria explained the hydrological situation, and that I think that makes things much clearer, who brings together these different proposed measures. Thank you so much. Did you hear it, Tamas? But I'm sure you know that.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
Somehow mostly I
I
heard
think
it.
that was really good for us to understand the case.
We're going back to these obstacles, like if you Sonata said that management company is changing, one day they agree, the other day they disagree, and so on. In the end, if they disagree, they don't want to change, what will be alternative, like for, and will it still be affected the 3,000 hectares area, or just a smaller part? Like, what are we going to do about it? Or is there a way that we can be certain for the company that's doing water management, they approved something and have signature on it and so on? So, because it just makes a big difference what can be done.
Yeah.
Can
Did you
you
hear
repeat
that?
it, please? No.
Shall I
Repeat it, please.
Yeah, that was a bit more complex.
Would you like to-
No? Can you do that? That'd be great to get the point across.
Yeah.
Best, yeah.
So hi, Thomas.
Hello.
The question was now going back to these obstacles. Like if the water management company is changing their opinion from day to day, and you don't know what will happen in the end, what's the alternative for like making this project work and to have these measures implemented? So, as far as I understood from Tiana's talks, that there is 3,000 hectares area, and if you cannot change how they are doing the management, will that be like smaller area than you will focus on, or it makes a big difference? Because this is not my area. I'm just like asking questions that come to my mind. So yeah, spatial questions.
Yeah, for long term, it would be ideal if they would change their water management plan. We are almost 100% certain that it won't happen, but if they would allow for us in some places, at least, for example, at this old artesian well, at least to try a pilot project, then maybe that would change their mind. So that's why we need some good connection with them. It's a problem. It's mainly political issue.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
but in that case, if they only allow in this artesian well to do like small experiment, how large is that area, like in terms of?
oh, it's 5 hectares that we want to flood and 10 hectares where we want to do the grazing. So it's not a big area, but that's not on the waterland, or how do we call it in English? So vodozemljište, to sad, kako se zove na engleskom?
Vodozemljište, water area.
Yeah.
The land
So it's not on.
Wet area. Yeah.
Wet area, yeah, could be.
So that's not in their jurisdiction, so they don't have much to interfere. But if we want to use the water to fill this area with water, then we need a permission, or we need to pay some fees. So that's another question. So everywhere we go, they are an obstacle.
Yeah, we're aware of it. But in that sense, Diana, how would it affect Sonata project, like taking time for water management company to agree?
No,
Like, when is the last?
So the goal, like, I mean, maybe I'm not right, but the goal is not to convince the water company to change its mind, but just to set up formation, which would be NbS, core BioSense NbS team, along with the partners from other sectors, which is his company, which is legal office, which is like I wrote it in here. Nature protection, water company, Palić-Ludaš, bios, legal advisors, farmers, schools, local government, touristic organization. And just like to have them all joined, like in a one participatory workshop, in which we will showcase how good it will be to do this.
Okay, but
It's perfectly into the next.
You kind of already made a blueprint for the living lab, no? In a way.
So, yeah. That's only to us to
Part of it,
learn
at least.
how to prepare and communicate with the different stakeholders, how to organize all this as we are researchers, and how to help, like, the key partner are this company. And then they should use the data from science, which are our data.
Can you hear, Kiana?
Yeah, they should use data from science, which we will prepare, but then along with preparing it, we are preparing this communication strategy, maybe some survey, what people think, how they feel, showcase them the numbers, because I strongly believe that from remote sensing and from hydrological model, they will have a numbers, and then we have media advisor. Come on, just say.
I just wanted to add one thing before Suba goes. Like, maybe that's more towards living lab. When is the last point in time when we should start with the process of, like, collecting this water, either like installing these gates or?
The participatory process should happen in the physical event of participatory workshop should happen in the year 3 of the project.
Okay.
But then
Getting even closer to the details.
yeah. But then what I wanted to say, like how they will manage these floodings and dams, and so it's up to Palić-Ludaš because they are applying for the resources for that. So we basically now should do a baseline condition screening.
Okay.
And then prepare the community and interaction.
Okay.
Learn how to do that. But if they manage in parallel to do implementation, that's super nice. But we
so
cannot.
In our case, it's not like the very implementation, and like what we reach is not.
No, we would love to have implementation, but it's depend of the money that will come. Yeah, I mean, right. It depends on.
It's a learning project.
Yeah, I get it. I thought that we also have to have some results of it. Yeah, but it's not like mandatory thing in this case. Okay. Okay.
Which everything is great and everything fun.
Okay.
Go back to reality and we're just preparing.
No, I thought that in this project we also have to have these results as a living lab project that will have like outcomes and present those, but it's not like.
But we building capacity. This is like research and innovation. We are not there that far.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
But then.
I think we need to live in both worlds, actually, the utopian and the real one.
For clarifying.
Thank you.
Thomas, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If I understand correctly, we are completely agree which action needs to be done. We need to let's say fix this operational of drainage canals and things. But for me, biggest challenge is that collect these main actors on the same table to make this happen. And that is, I think, first step before this concrete action that we need to done. But I want to suggest something in our, let's say, nature protection system. We have something what I think from my side, overlapping with Living Labs, this is a body, advisory body of users of protected area. Yeah. And
Yes,
this body,
yes, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
yeah, and we need to somehow introduce our Living Lab as something which will, in any next step, be this advisory body, because this advisory body collect on the same table farmers, public institutions, public, anyone who has interest in these protected areas. And this advisory body can suggest some actions which needs to be done to improve the sustainability of this protected area. And I think we need somehow think about this advisory body and somehow include, especially in our, let's say, in our speeches, in our, let's say, selling this Living Lab, because from my side, the biggest, let's say, challenge is how to collect these people on this same page, which benefits we offer them to let's say to attract them to join us in this process. Yeah.
The greatest challenge is how to maintain the group. Like
Yeah.
who is like how to do it? Like is this advisory body supported by some mechanism or
Yeah, this is maybe Vinko has some information about that, but this advisory body has some power to let's say to get some impact on function of these protected areas.
This is governmental body or no?
No,
Yeah,
I think it's okay. Vinko, please.
I can join. Yeah. So it is in the law of nature protection that every within every protected area, the manager can go for the creation of this advisory body, and that yes, they should include as much as possible, as much stakeholder groups, but of course that should not be a, I don't know, plenum of 100 people, but representatives of one or two, from fishermen, from hunters, from agricultural land users, etc. And it should have at least yearly minimum of 2 or 3 meetings, and this is only an advisory group, so they don't have any authority or some other power. They should advise. Of course, they can suggest things. They can provide information or help for the manager, but they cannot make decisions which are not aligned with the nature protection law or the priorities of the protected areas. So that's this. And I mentioned the previous workshop, which was online, that for me also this Living Lab is similar to this advisory group, which is in our nature protection law.
Fine.
And you also plan to create it within this area? That would be the first. It would be the first time, because we see the potential in this area, in the municipality of Kandiša. In Subotica and the protected areas, it's very complicated and complex to gather these people. We tried sometime, but that's a different world, as I mentioned earlier. So there is a will in Kandiša and in their local communities. So I think it will be possible, but really we need that 10-year management plan to be approved. That should be the basis our communication. So we need to present what do we want to do, what is the plan on the long term, what is the plan on the short term. And we need to include these stakeholder groups in the realization of this plan.
Wonderful. I think
just want to say one thing. So we try to adapt. We're sort of 1 hour behind, but it's a really interesting discussion. So, but we try to move on. But I just have one thing I wanted to sort of, I don't want an answer now, but at least to think about, and that's the connection between the NbS and the habitat mapping. So is there any, I'm not asking now, I'm just saying that we should think about if there's any mapping habitat exercises that will connect to this case study or only to the pollinator one. I don't want to start that discussion because we need to move on, but it's still it's one of the things to discuss because I think it could be quite interesting as well if there isn't, if it is planned or not planned.
It is planned.
It is planned. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah.
Need to discuss it.
Yeah.
I already discussed it with Tessa.
Okay,
for the
that's
break,
good.
but then,
Okay, we don't communicate.
Yeah, no, never.
We're not in the same office.
Yeah.
Yes, so let's so our plan now is presentation by Berit. Then we go into the groups and do a bit of training on the stakeholder mapping, and then we go for lunch, and then we have the results of presentations of what we came up with after lunch, because otherwise they won't schedule for that. So that's what
we push some parts behind the lunch break.
Yeah.
So I think that's best
Okay.
to do. So then we actually don't have stress. Just and it's just so valuable. And thank you, Tomáš, again for all this information and background. It's very good to have now with us. Should we scroll down? Yeah, and yeah. What did you say?
He's still there.
No, I just said I'm here, still here.
That's great.
This one? Or further down?
Yeah. So we can.
Tamas, can you see the screen? Can you see the presentation actually? No, because I'm not sharing, sorry. Yeah. Of course you don't.
I can use this.
Yes, just turn it on.
There we go.
Can you see it now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Then let's look shortly again at the overarching things about the Living Lab. But I'm sure most of you have been in the first part of the workshop that we had digitally, so you already have some good background, hopefully, on this Living Lab concept. But just shortly, what are they? They should be kind of a real-world testing ground where different stakeholders, people, businesses, researchers come together and try out and improve new ideas or solutions that we, for example, just discussed in this case of Cantabria, that can benefit everyone involved in the best way, right? And these benefits need to be discussed. They are not always so obvious from the start. So we can think of it like a shared arena of actions where everyone's input matters. And the goal is then to create something that works in everyday life and not just in theory. And here are some more ideas and statements about what living labs are and what their nature is. So it's about teamwork in a real setting. And they should focus on solving problems with input from the people who will actually use them or be affected by the solution. And we can also think of it as a place where ideas meet reality. And I think we already see this happening here in these discussions. So unlike traditional labs, living labs test solutions in real environments and show what happens if we do that. And maybe some stakeholder can be convinced that this is actually a good idea. It's a space for trial and error, so it should give some freedom to try out new things. And everyone should be considered as a co-creator. So this is also quite new, I guess. It's not this top-down approach anymore. It's kind of trying to creating things together. Yeah. So common characteristics of all living labs are this co-creation that have we talked most about, but also that really different methods are included. So this multi-method approach. And I think we have really good preconditions here with all the different disciplines already sitting here in this room to be involved. The user engagement and multi-stakeholder participation and this real-life setting. So they are a bit overlapping as well, but they show kind of the idea of the different components. So now, how can we try to set up such a living lab? And of course, there are different types of living labs for different topics, but here we are concerned with the implementation of nature-based solutions. And I think a first step has always to be to define the overarching vision and the objectives of a case and of a living lab as such. Is it climate adaptation? Is it nature protection? Is it risk reduction? So all these different overarching things. What is on the table? What do we want to achieve? Then a thorough context analysis and site selection is needed. As we see, we need to kind of define the case for the living lab to know what we are talking about and what we can negotiate, not at least. This is actually step 3, define what could be co-designed in living labs. So what is the room of negotiation? What kinds of different measures are we looking at? And this will also define the space for identifying and mapping the stakeholders that should be involved and could be involved. So there's always this question of who should be and who could be involved. And I think this, we come back to this later, should be actually as inclusive as possible from the start. So to think of the widest spectrum of stakeholders that could be involved. And then later on, one can always, out of practical reasons or whatever other reasons, kind of limit this also for different activities. But I think first one should lay out the whole picture of potentiality. Yeah, and then, and we come also to this later, one starts to think, how could we involve the different stakeholders in which activities and also when in the timeline of a project or of a case. Yeah, and then one has to somehow establish the contact to the stakeholders and establish actually a partnership and an agreement that one would like to work together on this, to create this arena of this living lab. Yeah, and then start the plan to conduct these different activities, to invite to different co-creation and co-design activities and look at the different solutions. And in the end, in the best case, implement solutions also in these real life settings. And we have also come to this point of the need to monitor and evaluate later on what has happened. And in the best case, we would like to have on-lasting living labs that can be sustained over time and also maybe scaled up to different initiatives. And this is not always so easy because many of these living labs nowadays, they are kind of project-based. So, but I think the overarching objective is to find possibilities to think about how to sustain and scale up such initiatives. Yeah, and then we would like to take actually the concrete issues of stakeholder mapping today for us here, to use this opportunity of all this expertise and the good ideas that you bring along to try to lay out such a stakeholder network. So to identify and analyze individuals and organizations that have a stake in a project or topic. And this, finding out what the stake actually is, means to understand the roles, the interests and influences of various participants. And in the best case, to foster an effective collaboration. So it should ensure inclusion and relevance. So inclusion, that's what I meant, try to lay out the widest possible field of including all stakeholders, and think about who could be relevant. Yeah, there are different possible methods to map stakeholders. And I would like to show you 3 of them. There are actually quite a number of several ones in addition, but I think these are actually, at least in my view, the easiest ones and also most effective ones, maybe. So we can start with those. And the first one is called this quadruple helix model. And it means actually just looking who or what stakeholders are could be relevant in academia, research, and teaching, from industry, from government, and from civil society, to really go through these different blocks of potential societal actors and see who could be then relevant for this living lab in this case. The next one is called this method of using an interest-influence stakeholder matrix. And here one tries to categorize stakeholders based on their level of interest in a potential project or case, and also their influence over it. So one could actually look at these different quadrants around this diagram and ponder about who could be then having a high influence on a project, for example, to prevent some measures to be taken, or yeah, also high interest, and accordingly around this the scheme. So this is actually pretty easy to do, I think, but in my view, quite effective to try. Yeah?
How we can do this? For example, is there any guidelines or just by our feeling, or how we can divide our stakeholders into these groups?
So I think it's to start thinking about who could be having a large or small influence on the project, and who could have interest in it. I don't think there's any more guideline actually, using previous knowledge, and it comes also with the attempt often to find people that might know more about it. If, for example, a group of researchers sits down and tries to do this mapping and finds, okay, do we actually know everything about the case? Then it would be probably time to reach out and ask some people that know more about this case, who could be having influence and interest in the project. So it actually, yeah, it's also true for this third method, the so-called stakeholder saliency model, that was already developed in the 1990s, but I think it's still very relevant actually, and is much used still. So this helps also to identify and prioritize stakeholders based on three key attributes. And here they use the attributes of power, legitimacy, and urgency. So you see this is slightly different, but from the interest and influence diagram, partially overlapping in real life, looking at societal actors, but also worth to try to map the stakeholders along these different attributes. Who has the power? So the influence. Who has little power? Who is has the legitimacy to be asked to participate? Who is having, who's influenced by the decisions that could be made? And who is really who should be urgently asked? So we can try to map it accordingly to this scheme as well. And you see there are also overlapping fields then that say something about the possible behavior of such stakeholders. They could be namely dangerous if you look at stakeholders with power and urgency. They could kind of be a risk for a potential project not to be conducted. There could be dominant stakeholders. And if you take the overlap between urgency and legitimacy, there could be also called dependent. But the actual scheme tries to point out which stakeholders are really standing out. That's what salience means, right? If you look at this scheme here as three-dimensional, then in the middle it would really stick out, the ones that are definitive, because they are relevant in terms of all the different attributes that are mentioned here. So it tries to bring out the importance of certain stakeholders to be included, but also here I would think it would be best to first look at all potential stakeholders and later on start to think who should be involved, when, in what activity. Yeah, sure.
Can you explain on the urgency factor? Urgency in what sense?
That they would really
How
Yeah.
quick should they?
That's really clear actually that they have a stake in this problem.
Mhm.
That they are really personally influenced, like a landowner that would have to give land away. He has a really urgent claim. So yeah, that's actually, I think, the best explanation that I have at the moment. Yeah, and the idea now would be to divide up in 3 groups and go to the different rooms. I think this is room 3.
This is.
Yeah. And then conduct such a stakeholder mapping based on these 3 different methods that I just showed. So each group has its own method, and you would please try to put in your ideas to collect all the different stakeholders that come to mind and to discuss in this group how they could be mapped in these different schemes.
Because everyone, everyone is transferred between the people, you know, but just Anastasia needs to go to your group because she isn't here in this list. And then Leah will go in group 3 instead of Otto. Okay, and then Jose is switched also to the group 2. Yes, if Anastasia goes to group 1, then Jose can go to group 2, and we are. But then just show them the final thing. Okay, yeah.
And also, Tamas, you would also best stay in this. Tamas should stay maybe directly connected here, right?
Yeah.
So you should actually be in group 3. Could we change out something? Tamas, would it be fine to stay here in this room with group three, even though you are on this list in group 2?
Yeah, well, I just wrote to Tiana and Maya that I'm not feeling so well, so I probably won't be participating. I'm very sorry, but really it's not.
You're not feeling well today?
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that was the reason I wasn't in person.
We understand, yeah. That's
Okay.
it's really understandable. And it's so great that you could join us so far.
Yeah.
We really appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay, so one question for everyone, because Berit wants to use Padlet application for one part of the discussion work. Is it easier for everyone to scan the code using their cell phones, or do I send you the link via email?
It would be good to do this probably on the computer, and I think it seems to be difficult to get this from the QR code transferred to the PC.
I made a mess. Is it working on a QR code?
Yeah. I mean, it works on your phone, but it's just hard to use Padlet on your phone.
Exactly. So therefore, we thought we could through the link exit it on the computer and have a larger screen to write on.
Like 3 people per tablet is fine.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone does it.
And not everybody needs to have it. Some people can just follow it on their phone, but for 2 or 3 people in each group to have it on the computer, that would be good. Yeah.
Okay, so do we have 2 computers per group? I guess. You have.
I mean, I do, and
I'm going to pick up mine. And I have mine. I have
yeah.
3. Okay, so we're safe then.
3 were set.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just send the link then to viewers.
Okay.
Then we try to write in on the phone because in the
Okay. Okay, I'll just send it then to everyone, but not everyone has a computer.
No, but that's not necessary. I mean, as long as
We have 2 or 3.
Yeah,
so it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, should I stop the presentation or? Is this the last slide?
Here we actually put up the group 3 diagram on the Padlet. So I'll open the Padlet here.
can just, but we don't need to for that, have it online. That's the point, right?
Maybe not.
Vi må jo uansett bytte rom, så ja.
And det skader heller ikke.
Jeg tror det.
Vi har en halv time.
Ja. Kanskje vi kan forlange litt 40 minutter. Men prøver vi å fordele oss nå. De første kommer til. Yes, and please, and listen to the leaders of the group. Yeah, they have the instructions. You're the leader.
So let's go. Yeah. Okay.
Maya? Maya? Maya?
Yes.
How do I get this large here? Used to this. How do I deliver it?
No, because we're. Should we stop the recording? Yes.
Yeah. It's gonna be.